That's good, yeah. Hey, what's up, hello, and boo, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SimplyPodLogical, a Simply Nailogical podcast. Today we are joined by a special spooky guest, Cristine's sister, Jen.
Hello, everybody. It's not Cristine. It's me, Jen again.
It's Jen again. Thanks for joining us, Jen. Jen, why are you here?
You made me.
We asked you to come here.
Just kidding.
It's because we want to talk about scary movies,
Yes.
horror movies.
Yes.
And we both have a problem.
Yes.
We both have partners who are big babies.
Big babies.
Who just can't watch scary movies.
No.
What's the deal with that?
They get too scared. I don't know why.
Yeah? What else do they get scared by? Loud noises?
Loud noises, outdoors.
Leaving the house.
Yeah, leaving the house.
Okay, so Jen and I were talking about this a few weeks ago, and we're like, let's just watch some scary movies, and then we could just talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah, so we gave Cristine the day off.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah, she's just doing nothing somewhere else. No. How did we pick the movies? Did I pick them?
You picked them.
We kind of talked about it, but we picked them.
Yeah, no, we did talk about a few, I think, and then you also had a few suggestions.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about 5 movies today. Spoiler alerts for everything. We're going to
Yeah.
talk about them. So we'll say them right now. We've got Midsommar, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Witch, Men, and a bit of a deep cut indie Canadian horror film from the 90s called Cube. So if you care about not knowing the ending or plot twists or anything of any of these movies, maybe watch them first and come back and watch this later. All right. And I think, I basically suggested most of these movies, but I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre was maybe your...
I think it was mine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. You ready for
I don't know what that means about me, but
We'll find out. All right, Jen, first movie. You ready?
hit me. Well, don't actually, but...
That's good. Midsommar is a movie about a young American couple, their relationship on the rocks, travel to a fabled Swedish midsummer festival where seemingly pastoral paradise transforms into a sinister, dread-soaked nightmare as the locals reveal their terrifying agenda. Directed by Ari Aster and starring Florence Pugh, Midsommar is a great movie if you ever felt like murdering your boyfriend.
Yeah.
Jen, did you relate to Midsommar?
No, not yet, at least.
Oh, okay.
No, this was an interesting watch.
Was it? Okay, so
Yeah.
you hadn't seen this before.
No, I had not. I
Okay.
know that you had seen it before.
Yeah,
'cause
this
I
is my
remember,
second watch.
Yeah, I remember a while back you and Cristine had told me to watch it because you told me I'd probably like it.
Yeah, well, this is an interesting one because I don't know if I would say this is a very scary movie.
No, it's more kind of like, I don't know if I want to call it a psychological thriller, but it's almost like traditional, like cultural traditions versus like norms. Like
Yeah,
I
okay.
would say, which makes you like think. So it is some type, in a way, like a psychological like thinker. Can I call it that?
Let's unpack that a bit because, okay, we've got these Americans. They're
Yeah.
like grad
Yeah.
students, like anthropology students,
Yeah.
right? And one of them is Swedish, and he's like, hey, every 80 years, my family has this midsummer festival. It's a big deal. And so one of them goes there thinking, like, this is going to be my thesis.
Right.
And then the other guy, the jerk, the boyfriend, once he sees how interesting it is, he's like, I'm going to make this my topic. But yeah, there's definitely an element of the movie that I found relatable just from having been in, like, grad school and been in circles of sociology students where it's really interesting that, like, they start seeing the horror of
Right.
this group, this cult, and their social norms, like old
Exactly.
people committing suicide once they get to a certain age as part of this festival.
Yeah.
And they just sort of, oh, this is an interesting topic for a thesis instead of like, I should get the fuck out of here, right?
Yeah. And because, I mean, I guess with sociology and stuff, and they are studying, you know, a culture or beliefs that they have no knowledge of, right? So I think it's a little bit like, oh, is this okay or is it not? But they decided to stay, spoiler alert, and like they wanted to continue writing their thesis on this. And the bad guy, or not the bad guy, the boyfriend.
He is the bad guy.
He was not a nice boyfriend. He tried to like steal this topic, right, from the other guy who had originally intended for it to be his topic.
Yeah. So I've also heard this movie described as like a breakup movie.
Okay.
Do you think that's that? Because it basically here. Let's like unpack it a little bit more. The movie starts with a couple, this young couple, where it seems like he's about to break up with her, right?
Yes.
He's complaining to all his friends. His friends are like, you should break up with her.
And his friends basically say you've been wanting to break up with her for like a year or something
Yes.
like that, right?
But the most horrifying part of the movie probably is the first like 10 minutes of it, because the main character.
Also, that like
fucked, yeah.
they never explored that any further. Like,
But isn't that the trauma she's dealing with the whole movie? Basically,
Yeah.
the main character, Florence Pugh Pugh,
pew pew.
her sister kills herself and her parents at the
Yes.
start of the movie. So the boyfriend was going to break up with her, but after she goes through this like enormous trauma and tragedy, it's like he feels like he can't break up with her.
Right.
So they're kind of only sticking together because he
feels bad.
He feels bad, but
essentially.
but he already though like wasn't going to break up with her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so they go to this Sweden, this Midsummer festival together, and I thought maybe the most interesting thing about the movie is like as they're going through like these sort of rituals and those sort of cultural practices and everything. Horror aside, like she is getting something from it that she wasn't getting from her relationship, right?
Right.
Because a lot of their sort of traditions and practices are about like we're a community, we all feel things together.
Togetherness, yeah.
So she has this boyfriend who won't even like doesn't remember her birthday and doesn't care what she thinks or feels about anything anymore. And meanwhile, she has a bunch of like strange Swedish women she never met, like on the floor writhing in agony with her as she's feeling any sort of emotion.
Yeah. And they've kind of like taken her under their wing and like included her into everything that they're doing. So she has that feeling of community.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a happy movie.
Yeah.
As she burns her boyfriend alive in a bear suit.
Yeah. So that was interesting.
Did you see that coming? Or?
No, I thought that they were just going to burn the bear because you saw like it was towards the beginning that they had arrived. There was that like paintings.
Yes.
Kind of like a
Sort of
sequence.
vignette,
Of like things that were going to happen. Like not that we knew, but that's what ended up it being, right? So I did know the bear was going to get burned. Didn't realize they were going to stuff him in the bear.
Yeah.
He was alive still, but just like completely paralyzed. Yeah.
That's pretty terrifying.
That is extremely terrifying.
I mean, it sounds scarier saying it, but like while you're watching the movie, they're not playing it for horror.
No.
Right?
No, but that's why I'm like, it's more of kind of like a psychological, like mind
That's
fuck.
what's fucked up about the movie. Like you're seeing a guy get burned alive in a bear a bear carcass, but they're kind of playing it like it's a cathartic moment for a girlfriend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, just to add to that, before we get into I would like to dissect the girlfriend moment during the bear burning as well. But there's also people who voluntarily sit in this little hut that they're burning down with him and the bear. They voluntarily sit in to be burned down too. So I was just like, oh, okay. Like that would be scary for me, but I guess not for them.
You want to dissect the...
I wanted to dissect a little bit because in the end, so she's like, she wins this competition, this like dance competition.
She becomes the May Queen of their Midsommar
which is like the big exciting thing, I guess, for the women in this community.
Sure,
and so she's like in this massive like flower dress. I don't even know what it was.
It's
to be honest.
amazing.
But she's
set
essentially
design,
like, And the very last scene after her boyfriend's burned in the bear, she's just like smiling, like into the camera, like creepily smiling. And I'm like, okay, what is she happy about? Is she happy that this is like revenge on her boyfriend and like he's dead? Or is she happy that she's like, oh, I have finally found this sense of community and togetherness?
I want to say it's the latter, but she's still tripping on mushrooms, we think, while all of this is happening.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. A lot of this movie, they're doing drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like part of the norms and rituals of the event, right? But yeah, she's clearly tripping this whole time. And actually, this movie might have like the best... the way they sort of depict or represent them being on these mushroom trips and like the way things are filmed is really interesting. I thought they did a really cool job of that. Remember when they first take it, when they first arrive in Sweden?
Yeah.
Like the way there's like waves of the interesting visual
like
effects.
the nature. And then because it also kind of helps you realize later in the movie when they're on mushrooms again, because she sees some of the same things that she saw in the first scene when we know that they
and a lot
really
of it
did
is
do
being
mushrooms.
haunted by the memory of her sister too, right?
Yeah.
But like at the end when they're doing the May Queen sort of dance. Whoever can dance the longest becomes the May Queen that she wins. At one point, she just starts speaking Swedish to somebody, and they're talking back to her.
Yeah.
She's not speaking Swedish. They're just like speaking gibberish to each other.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. But they're somehow communicating to each other.
So I'm glad you brought up the facial expressions, because we can't stop talking about this movie without acknowledging Florence Pugh's amazing ability to convey things with her face. Because like even I think the cover of the movie, or like the famous visual from this movie, I think is her doing that frown. I don't know how to explain this.
Oh,
throughout so much of the end of the movie, she just has this look on her face, like this kind of strained.
She's like, I feel like it's because she doesn't really know like what's right, what's wrong at that point, right? Like, is this normal? It's not something known to her, but now all of a sudden it's this like comfortable feeling for her.
It's the pouty. We should do it for the thumbnail though. Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Jen. All right, so what do you want to do? Give this a rating? Was it scary or not? How do you want to sum up?
So I wouldn't classify it as scary per se. I would say it's more of a psychological mind fuck, if that's the genre. I don't know. I don't know what else to call it. What would you call it?
It's a breakup movie.
A breakup movie. That's how you break up with people.
Yeah.
No, don't do that. That would not be good.
Yeah, I would recommend this movie. It might be it's one of the better movies on this list, I would say. But yeah, I wouldn't go into it expecting to be scared. You made notes? You did some homework?
I forgot. I did homework for this.
Yeah, you could pull up whatever you want.
Sorry, go on. What were you saying?
I was going to talk about the next movie, but
I want to say one more thing.
Okay.
So I found for this movie, they played extremely annoying music, like very loud, like screeching, almost like that hurts your ears type music. And I feel like that was them trying to contribute to that like uncomfortable feeling.
For sure.
To make you like start to think, oh, okay, what's happening here? You know, it gives you that kind of like sensation.
And almost like there's the juxtaposition between that, and there's also sort of like the sort of pleasant melodies of the sort of the Midsommar Festival itself, I would say. I think that's even more obvious so Ari Aster also did Hereditary.
Okay.
Which is the movie he did before this.
Yeah, I think I saw that a while back.
That is, to me, a much scarier. That movie left a much bigger imprint on me from that fucked me up way more than this one.
That movie is, I would, say it's definitely got more of a scary vibe to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it also had the same sort of, I think a lot of modern horror filmmakers now are using this technique of, there are just certain like frequencies of music that just make you uncomfortable.
Exactly. And it adds to just like the whole experience of the thriller.
It's part of their repertoire of making you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
All right. Midsommar, would recommend. Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. I would recommend. It's worth a watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix in Canada anyway.
Not sponsored.
Sponsored by Florence Pugh. Next movie, Jen, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The only classic horror movie on this list. Synopsis is, when Sally hears that her grandfather's grave may have been vandalized, she and her paraplegic brother Franklin set out with their friends to investigate. After a detour to their family's old farmhouse, they discover a group of crazed murderous cannibals living next door. As the group is attacked one by one by the chainsaw-wielding Leatherface, who wears a mask of human skin, the survivors must do everything they can to escape. Released in 1974, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a classic low-budget horror film. Jen, what was your favorite part of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
My favorite part was the different faces he put on. No, I'm just kidding.
My favorite part is when they had her over for dinner.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to eat her.
Yeah.
And they bring the grandfather down.
Yeah.
And it's like, they give grandfather her finger. That is just such a disgusting visual of like this young woman, they cut her finger so the cannibal grandfather can like suck on her finger.
Yeah, super weird. That whole dinner party was extremely weird.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was purposefully made to be like extra, like these people are totally like out of the norm on purpose because they want you, especially during that time. Like
Yeah.
if you compare it to movies from today, they want you to be like, okay, these crazy like serial killers are not like your average person that you meet on the street. I mean, that's not the truth. But I
Okay.
find with this Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it was like amplified how like weird this family and Leatherface was.
Yeah, so I had never seen, well, like, I've seen bits and pieces of this movie. Like, if it was on TV, I might watch a few minutes of it, but I'd realize I'd never actually seen this beginning to end.
Okay.
The thing that really stuck out to me was they film it in a very, it doesn't have like the sort of narrative development of a lot of movies
Right.
you watch, where it's
Yeah.
like, here's your protagonist, here's a challenge they need to overcome, here's the climax, this, that, or whatever. It doesn't really hit those story beats. It's just like
No.
you get dropped into a van with a bunch of kids. They hear that there's, you know, the cemetery, there's been like grave robbing going on in the area. It's sort of, that's obviously foreshadowing that there's some connection there, but you literally just get dropped into this situation where they're almost immediately in just like this horrifying situation where this like family in the middle of nowhere, Texas, is just trying to murder them and they have like really
Yeah.
no way to escape.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is trying to be, or it is a true horror movie, right? Like it's like that gory kind of like blood and guts type of movie,
Although-
which isn't always the case these days for a horror movie,
I would
right?
say it's not gory by today's standards.
Well, no, because they didn't have the same technology back then that we do now.
But I read a little bit about this. I think he was the filmmaker. I can't remember his name. Was trying to avoid getting like an R rating or like a
Okay.
rating that would make it much more difficult for people
Right.
to see. That used to matter a lot more than I think it does now.
Yeah.
So a lot of like the most violent moments, it's like, oh, behind this shelf, you can't actually see the
It
chainsaw
kind of
going
cuts
into.
it out of the
Yeah.
scene. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. But it wants you to like picture it almost. Like, I mean, like you're thinking, like you can obviously picture in your head, like this person's getting cut up by a chainsaw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
scary.
it's no secret what's happening.
There's no subtlety here, right?
No, exactly.
Yeah, you just get, and I wonder if the appeal of this movie is like, I don't know, this might sound out of touch, but like how, with certain movies that are like fantastical, like like not many people are going to find themselves at a Midsommar festival in Sweden where shit can go down.
I doubt it, but you never know.
You never know. This to me, I think why it resonates with people is this idea of like, if you're on a road trip in a small town somewhere, run out of gas, you know, that's just such like a universal
yeah, it's
idea.
relatable.
Yeah.
Like
So
this could happen
relatable.
to you.
And, you know, people who
But-
grow up in cities just assume people in the country are cannibals.
Are crazy. But also, this was based on a true story.
So I actually don't know. I'm aware that they took some inspiration from, who is
Yeah.
it, Ed Gein?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you know more about this?
I only looked into the survivor because there's one survivor in the movie. And so I looked into whether or not that was true and if the survivor is still alive. So apparently that was true.
Really?
There was
That
only
someone got
one
away.
survivor from this group of people. But she ended up dying like a couple years shortly after. And they don't really say why, but I think she was under some type of like medical surveillance. So I don't really know
Well, yeah.
if it was like
even
mental
to survive
health
that,
or
yeah.
I don't really know.
I
But
thought the only inspiration they took was that he had done stuff with like the skin of his victims, like made them into lampshades and stuff like that.
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
know if it was like there's actually like if it was at all based on actual killings of people he did. I don't think it is.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Someone fact
Who
check
knows?
us.
Yeah. Somebody let us know.
I generally don't like movies based on true crime.
Yeah.
I have some ethical issues with that, especially
Well,
if they're not done
properly.
responsibly
And
Yeah.
respectfully. But also the disclaimer in the beginning, which apparently wasn't on your movie.
I guess I ignored the
But there was a
disclaimer.
massive, like, long written disclaimer basically saying, like, you know, basically a trigger warning for some people, right? Like, you shouldn't watch this if you have certain things about you or relatives, whatever. And like, I think it was because it was based on a true story that it did that.
So mine had something crawling down there, but I thought it was just trying to imply, like, here are the terrible events of something that happened. And I thought it was just like a fake. This actually happened. You know, some horror
Well,
movies
maybe I'm just more gullible than you.
It sounds like you actually read it, and I just sort of ignored it.
Well, I was kind of just annoyed with how long it was, and I was like, when is this going to get into the actual movie?
It doesn't take too long before shit starts going down, right?
No, it gets right into it.
Yeah, the movie, I felt like it was a quick watch. I wasn't like looking at my watch, like waiting for it to be over.
Okay, and so when I went to find the original, because I grew up watching the one from, I think there was one in 2003.
Jessica Biel?
Jessica Biel. I can't remember the other actors' names, but that was the one I first watched when I was younger. So when I was looking for the older version, I found that they had one that just released this year.
On Netflix, I think. Yeah,
and I was like, whoa. So I ended up watching it as well.
I heard it was like hot garbage.
It was garbage. It was basically the exact same storyline, obviously.
Was it a prequel, or does it take place right after the first one in like the timeline?
No. Yeah, so it's like years after the first one, I think, because I mean, Leatherface is still missing. Like, they don't know what's happened to him. Okay. But you can tell it's very much like supposed to be like in today's time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was very much like Gen Z targeted, I would say, as the viewers. Like,
who's it starring?
Well, and like they drive in their Tesla and stuff and into this like small little town in Texas, and they're just like trying to get investors to come and like, hey, let's turn this like town into something spectacular,
like
right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, not that, but like, you know, trying to like spruce it up, and then obviously Leatherface turns up. So
it's this Leatherface fights against gentrification.
Exactly. Yeah, he's like, I stand for my community
with the little people.
That's no longer. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's funny. I won't be watching that.
I wouldn't recommend.
So, original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Was it scary?
I think I'll say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, as scary as a movie made in the 70s probably will be.
Yeah.
And I'll give it a thumbs up, but it's kind of like not as enthusiastic as, a really well-made movie like Midsommar, for example. Okay.
Yeah. Wait, is it Midsommar or Midsommar?
I mean, we're not Swedish, right?
Okay. Well,
it's kind of like when you say the name of a foreign country, do you say it like pretending you're speaking their language, or?
No, because I would probably not do it very well.
Midsommar? Third movie, Jen. Are you ready? Are you too scared? Are you okay? Can we keep going?
I think I'll be okay.
Yeah, okay. Next one is The Witch.
Oh, boy.
Set in the 1600s New England, panic and despair envelop a farmer, his wife, and their children when their youngest son Samuel suddenly vanishes. The family blames Thomasin, the oldest daughter, who is watching the boy at the time of his disappearance. With suspicion and paranoia mounting, the twin siblings Mercy and Jonas suspect that Thomasin is a witch, and they testing the family's faith, loyalty, and love to one another. Written and directed by Robert Eggers, and a mainstream debut for Anya Taylor-Joy. Jen, what did you think of The Witch?
Actually, interesting that you said it was her. Oh, hello. Her debut.
I'm pretty sure she was probably in stuff before this, but it's what made people really recognize her. Because I was wondering if this
was before or after the Queen's Gambit.
It was before the Queen's Gambit. So it was the main actress from the Queen's Gambit is Thomasin, the young woman who gets accused of being a witch.
Yeah. So I found this movie very hard to like stay invested in. First of all, half the time I couldn't understand what they were saying because they were speaking English, but they were speaking kind of like old style.
You're right.
English. I don't know if it was Shakespeare. I have blocked out everything I learned about Shakespeare, but
they are speaking like in olden
English
style English. Yeah.
Yeah. And also there's an accent there, but I'm not really sure. I don't know if it was just like the actor. The one actor I could never underund her.
The father?
Catherine?
Oh, the mother.
The mother.
So I actually turned on the subtitles watching
this.
Okay.
I just found like, I don't know if she was just not great at playing the accent role. I had a hard time understanding.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that would make this movie a little harder.
And it was just also super weird.
I think this is my favorite movie on
Oh
the
my
list.
God.
Oh no, Jen. Okay.
Oh man.
Let's unpack. Okay, because I think I didn't find it slow or. Here's what I'll say. I think I appreciated it more watching it a second time. So it starts basically this family in New England. Like you are immediately thrown into the situation where the family or the father is kind of like on trial, where he basically thinks their town isn't religious enough, and he's sort of like banished out of their plantation as sort of like the family's just ostracized. So they like go out into a field in the middle of nowhere and they try to make their own sort of life
living
there,
space,
right?
yeah.
But like we're like 10, 15 minutes into the movie when like shit really starts going down. Worth noting, I think at the very beginning, it describes itself as this one had some text at the very beginning too, right? I think it just said this is like a New England folktale.
Oh.
And I think that really conveys what the movie feels like. It feels like you're reading like a Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah.
Kids go into the woods and get snatched up by a witch. It
Yeah.
really has that vibe, but in like a very I don't want to say realistic, but like in a sort of mature version of a story like that.
Yeah. Not so much a fairy tale, if
Yeah.
you can call it that.
Well, it kind of
Was
it has
Hansel and
a
Gretel a fairy tale?
Do we call that fairy
Maybe
folktale?
not.
So like so Thomasin, the oldest daughter, she's expected to help the family out, right? And like at some point, it even becomes part of the narrative that like they're thinking of just selling her off to become like a servant for another family because they can't grow food on their farm. But yeah, she's looking after the kid, this baby, and playing peekaboo with it.
Yeah.
This is a really striking visual for the movie. She's playing peekaboo and like she covers her eyes and the baby's there and laughing. She covers her eyes and then the baby's just gone. And you see like the rustling off into the trees like far, far away, right? So this is a movie about witches, basically.
Yeah.
But I thought what's so interesting about it is like so much of it is about this super devout religious family suspecting that their own daughter is a witch and she is the cause of all the misery and hardship they're facing, like right up until the end. And like I really recommend this movie, so you should watch it. But like big spoiler alert, it turned out the devil was just like this fucking goat on their farm.
Yeah.
How awesome is that?
This is very random, very realistic for sure.
But like they lay the notes, like the two younger kids are like constantly talking about this goat and like the goat told me this.
Well, and the
Right?
goat also did try to attack them and their dad at one point.
Well, at the very end, the goat like literally kills the father.
But before that.
Before that, you know,
Yeah.
the goat's kind of up to no good.
But there is also the witches in the forest.
Yeah, but clearly the goat is sort of the manifestation of the devil.
Yeah.
Who lures women into the forest to become witches.
I do have issue with whether it's the witches or the goat that's luring them into becoming these types of witches because
Okay.
it seemed very uncomfortable and weird. Their wanting and how much they liked little children. Like
Okay.
like the one woman like kissed the little boy and I
Oh,
was
yeah.
just like what is happening now?
Yeah,
Like
that's pretty
it was
uncomfortable.
strange.
So another kid, not the baby in the family,
Yeah.
but there's a young boy, like probably like 12 years old or something like that, right? But I think the idea there was like they're sort of playing off of him just becoming the age where he's thinking about girls.
Right.
So the
But
witch
she was-
presents herself to him
But
as an
she
attractive
was still
woman.
like sexualizing him.
Yeah, but I think that's more about what would work in luring him to the woods.
I guess, but I still thought it was fucking weird.
It is, yes.
I'm like,
it is
okay,
very,
so we're witches and we're also pedophiles now. Like,
yeah,
it was.
any time a movie
Yeah,
puts kids in that situation.
I don't like that.
I agree. That is pretty messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I just had to say it.
Yeah, you're right. That is pretty bizarre. And then I guess if we would just want to unpack the ending, so the whole family basically
Everybody's dead.
Everyone dies around this
Except for
Black Phillip. The goat tears the family apart, and then we're just left with Thomas in there. Like her own mother tried to kill her because she thinks he's a witch. The father gets killed by the goat. Witches murder the other kids. I guess it's implied in the.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but of course, the one who they suspected of being the bad person or the witch or whatever
Yeah.
is the one that survives.
Yeah, and it would have been so easy for this movie to have been played in a way where it's just like, oh, there is nothing supernatural going on. Like the wolf took the baby.
Right.
The goat's just a goat, and mother just is a crazy religious person who thinks her daughter's a witch.
Right.
But you're left with Thomasin there, like sitting in despair. She's just lost everything, and she just goes like, "Hey, goat, like, if you are the devil, like, speak to me.
Take me to the other witches."
Exactly. And then it turns out, so it's like then she does become a witch at the end.
Well, same with Midsommar. She wanted a sense of community. She had no one else left, right?
That's right.
And then you just see like all the witches dancing naked around the fire and like lifting up. And I was like, what?
Just didn't do it for you, right? Too weird?
Yeah. It didn't work for me, unfortunately.
You like stories more grounded in like situations that could happen?
Yes. I like believing, okay, this could happen to me or my best friend. And that's what freaks me out. That's what scares me and why I like scary movies.
Okay.
If they're like real situations.
Then you must have really liked our next movie, Men.
Oh my God.
Okay, wait. So first of all, on The Witch, I'm just going to say big thumbs up from me.
I'm giving it a thumbs down.
Jen's giving it a thumbs down.
Sorry.
That's okay. Scary? Meh.
It depends, because some people are afraid of witches and like the devil and stuff like that. So I think it depends on the person who's watching.
I wonder how much of my interpretation of this movie and other movies that have any sort of religious aspect is because I did go to church when I was a young kid.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know.
So they really like ingrain in you this like actual fear of some of these things. I don't think as much as a non-believer as I am these days, I feel like there's always a little part of that still exists.
See, for me, I've never like believed that the devil or witches are real.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not as scary because I don't think it's going to happen to me.
Okay, that's a healthy attitude. Right, Minchie?
Right.
Okay.
She's just staring at me. Hey, man, I'm not Cristine. I'm not
She's
your
confused.
mommy.
She's overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Men.
Men.
Synopsis. In the aftermath of a personal tragedy, Harper retreats alone to a beautiful English countryside, hoping to have found a place to heal. But someone or something from the surrounding woods appears to be stalking her. What begins as simmering dread becomes a fully formed nightmare, inhabited by her darkest memories and fears, in visionary filmmaker Alex Garland's feverish, shape-shifting new horror film. Jen, what the fuck was up with this movie?
Ben, I have a question for you before we get into this.
I hadn't seen it before.
Okay, but I'm like, where did you hear about all these weird movies?
This is pretty... So this guy... Well,
actually, the actress in it, she's pretty well known.
Oh, I
I recognize her at least. I can't remember what from right now.
I only knew about this movie because the filmmaker Alex Garland, right? Yeah. So he did Ex Machina.
I don't know what that is.
It's a movie about like artificial intelligence.
Okay.
That kind of got some buzz with Oscar Isaac.
Okay.
And then Annihilation with Natalie Portman.
Okay.
Which is kind of like a sci-fi horror movie that.
Okay. Interesting you say that now, but.
Yeah. So if this had been the only movie this person had ever come out with, I'm not sure I'm rushing to see their next movie. I didn't hate the start of this movie, or even like the first half, maybe.
I didn't hate the movie.
Okay.
And I'm with you. I thought I liked where it was going. Uh-huh. But then the ending, I was just like
checked
what?
out. Like,
what was the point?
Okay, well, we'll get into the ending a little bit. But so basically, this woman is going to leave her husband, and husband in like the most emotionally abusive and manipulative thing you could do is like, I will kill myself if you leave me. And then he either accidentally falls off the roof of their house or is just acting on that threat.
They leave it unclear to how he actually, because she witnesses him falling from the balcony above their unit. And she makes eye contact with him as he's falling down to his death. But they don't clarify if he actually jumped
Which
or
is
if it
part of the
was
horror of it, right, for her, right?
Yeah.
To actually never know that.
Yeah. And wonder if she was the cause of his death, right?
Yeah. Well, she seems to have a pretty healthy attitude. Yeah. Anyway, that is a very complicated thing for anyone, right? So she is the sort of subtext of all of this is like her having been in this abusive relationship.
Right.
And so she goes to the countryside to get over this. But this is a horror movie where the monster is just like different embodiments of misogyny, right?
Yeah.
So it's the policeman who
Yeah.
doesn't take her seriously. It's the weird, creepy stalker coming out of the woods. So I think this core idea is actually super compelling and interesting for a horror movie. The idea of like, I think a lot of men have no idea just like the situations women find themselves in all the time where there is the threat of violence from men.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
all the time. So like I love that idea, which is why part of the reason I wanted to put it on this list. And I feel like it was kind of doing that in the first half. But I think it just got like so sort of fantastical and bizarre in the second half that I don't really know what I'm supposed to think about anything.
Yeah, and so I agree with you to your point on this is kind of like a good example or almost like learning kind of for the audience that, you know, women can find themselves in these positions where men don't even realize, right, what they're doing or what may be perceived by the woman. And even to, like in this movie, this woman who is in this like sleepy town, every single person she encounters, like at the bar, at the church, the priest, the other guy who is at the church, they're all men.
Yeah.
And even she confides in the priest, you know, she's going through a lot.
Yeah.
And even the priest turns on her.
Yeah. How do you feel about like causing her husband's suicide?
And like later on, you know, when she's being attacked, she's literally attacked by every man that she came into contact with.
Yeah. So I don't think there's any one way of interpreting this film, but yeah, the climax is that she is like literally being tormented by all these men invading her home, but like it's switching from one man to the next. And then in one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen in a movie, these men start giving birth to each other.
Oh yeah, it was
in a very extended sequence that I don't think was necessary at all.
I just like don't understand the point of it, but I'm wondering if it is, I don't know, to try to be almost give a woman's perspective or point of view.
Yeah, so like one of the men is there, starts like writhing, and like the man has like a vagina in his back, and then the next man comes out of it
as if,
and they're all like coming at her. I guess my read on it is it's like this idea that misogyny is sort of like rebirthed in different men, and there's sort of that perpetual cycle of misogyny, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't think I needed to see that literally represented in a birthing process for 15 minutes at the end of the movie.
It was a long scene.
Yeah.
But I found this movie in general, a lot of the scenes were long.
Yeah,
I don't know if
things.
that was part of, you know, trying to give you that kind of like horror-y, uncomfortable feeling, because it really, the scenes I found sometimes lasted a little bit too long, and then it starts making you think or feel uncomfortable about what's happening in the scene.
Yeah. And I wonder if the birthing thing too, like at the very end, her sister comes to like...
And she's
pick her
pregnant.
up, and she's pregnant. So I almost feel like it's maybe trying to plant a bit of a seed of like,
she's gonna
there might
give
be
birth
another man in there.
to a jerk ass. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
It is a little, well, it depends how you interpret it. I think a lot of people negatively reviewed this film because it's just like a very like, okay, we get it. Men suck. You know what I mean? But I think you could also interpret the movie just as like, in the trauma of her coming out of an abusive relationship, all she can see in men is the potential or real misogyny.
That's what she's haunted by.
Exactly, right? So I don't think you necessarily have to like think this is
it's
like
not like a blanket
some
statement.
overtly political,
Yeah, all men suck, but abusive men, I think they suck, in my opinion.
That's a pretty safe statement to make.
Yeah,
I think so.
But I did also find this movie, like towards the end, I was like, what happened? And like, what was the point of this movie? I thought I was loving it. It was like going a great direction. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
it just turned into, it was almost like this weird, like sci-fi-ish, but not really sci-fi, but things happening that obviously are never going to happen in real life.
Yeah. Well, if you're looking for realism in your movie, there's a lot more just sort of like metaphorical. This birth represents this sort of thing. So if you don't like that sort of thing, this movie is definitely.
I'm not a huge fan of sci-fi, so maybe that's why I.
That's interesting. So yeah, the two movies this guy's famous for are sci-fi movies.
Right.
And Annihilation 2 is like, well, I think his first film, or Ex Machina, if that's his first film, was very much sci-fi. Like if we developed an artificial intelligence, what sort of ethical responsibility would you have to it? It's kind of like the theme of that movie.
Yeah.
But then the second one's more like aliens invade that can mimic humans, and it's kind of terrifying. So it was really like science and horror. And then this is him, I think, swinging more to the horror side, but he still has the same sort of like sci-fi conventions of things just being super bizarre and out of this world, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just found in the end, so her dead husband reappears.
Yes,
and
he is rebirthed through this birthing
he's rebirthed,
process. Yeah.
exactly. And they're basically having a conversation. And it's like, well, what do we do now?
Yeah, but it's still sort of manipulative, right?
Yeah.
Like the husband still sort of conveys this blame of her,
Yeah.
which could just be her.
It
what
could just
she
be
is-
her mind
her
and what
trauma
she's
and
struggling
processing
with,
it. Yeah.
right? Her trauma.
Yeah. So we almost talked about it like we liked it conceptually, but
Yeah.
probably didn't really enjoy actually watching it.
I did like it.
Okay.
I just like it wasn't the best ending for me. I don't know.
You said you liked it like you're over at someone's house for dinner, and
Yeah,
like,
like, it was-
the food's
it
terrible,
was
and you're like,
nice.
I liked it.
You enjoyed it, but you don't need to go back and revisit, right?
You seem so angry at me at the beginning for even suggesting this one.
No, I just was like, where the hell did he find this?
Yeah.
Or
It's
how
not
did?
that
Well,
deep a
I
cut.
felt that way about a few of these movie choices. So
Okay. Well, the next and last one is definitely the deepest cut. Actually, wait, do we have to give a rating to men?
yes, we do. I would say a thumbs up for me. I think
Okay.
I think it is worth a watch. And if you can like open up your mind to maybe what the meaning of it is
Okay.
too, I think it's worthwhile.
I'm going to give it a thumbs down just because I can't give everything a thumbs up, right?
Oh yeah, you've been giving everything a thumbs up.
Well, I did pick the movie.
You're just like, I love horror movies.
Yeah, that's me. That sounds just like me. All right, last one. Cube. An independent Canadian horror film released in 1997. Cube is about a bunch of strangers who wake up in a booby-trapped box. Can they survive inside the cube? No. Most of them don't. But who's the real monster, Jen? Is it the cube or their own lack of humanity? It's mostly the cube because people are products of their environment. But can they escape the cube?
We'll find
No,
out.
they
No,
don't.
they can't.
They don't.
Well, one guy does.
Yeah, one person gets out of the cube.
Yeah.
Jen, did you like Cube?
No. Okay, so I'm sorry. I could not get over the terrible acting.
Oh,
It
it's
was
real
awful.
bad. Yeah, I
like
know.
not convincing whatsoever.
Super low budget indie Canadian.
Also, yeah, I couldn't stop laughing at like the effects. I'm just like, what? They obviously didn't have a big budget for this movie.
No, the whole movie is filmed in one set.
And maybe I'm spoiled now because we have so many good movies to watch with like so many different effects and like their budgets are millions and millions of dollars. But this one was definitely not that.
So this movie definitely has a cult following. I hear what you're saying, and nothing you're saying is wrong. But clearly there's some appeal to this movie to people, I guess just in it being a bit of a novel concept, I guess. So these people wake up in a box. They wake up in a cube, and that cube is like in a grid. It's a series of cubes within a giant cube. So there's like 6 sides to the cube with doors. And if you go through some doors, some of the rooms are booby trapped, and you get like
Yeah.
fucking
You're,
burned
like,
alive or sprayed with acid.
Killed instantly or something like
Yeah.
that.
So a lot of the movie is just like this sort of puzzle of like, we don't know why we're here. So it's a lot of speculation about why they could be in there. And it's just like, can we figure out the puzzle of getting out of the cube? It's like an escape room type.
Yeah. And hey, maybe we should think of it as they all seemingly were put there because they all had different, talents, I guess we
Yeah.
could call them, that could be useful in figuring out how to escape. So they had to work together as a team and like figure out who had what to move on to the next.
So you get the
cube.
impression like they're in these series of trials and they're picking people to sort of test them to see if they
Right.
can get out. So they pick the girl who's still in school and she's good at math. And they pick the cop because I guess he's strong
Well,
and
he
could just be
was
brutal.
an
Well, he kind of
ass.
turns into the bad guy of the group. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, part of the threat isn't just the cube. It's that, if you were stuck in a
People.
box with 7 people and one of them,
Who would you kill first?
yeah, basically, like, they end up really killing each other more
Yeah.
than anything, than the traps, right?
Yeah.
So I liked this movie a lot as a kid. Watching it again recently, first of all, I couldn't find it anywhere except like someone just uploaded it to YouTube, by the way. Like I couldn't even figure out how to buy it. Maybe it's on
I
a
couldn't find
service
it
I didn't have.
anywhere except for YouTube.
Yeah, so and then there's they made 2 sequels to it that are pretty universally disliked. So
Okay.
probably not worth watching. But there's an interesting like math. I'll just quickly acknowledge the math thing, and then I'll say like the one thing I actually think is kind of interesting about the movie.
Are you saying the math thing because you want your brother to be proud of you?
I just think how often do you hear a horror movie where it's like part of the movie
is math?
is like Fibonacci sequence or the prime numbers, right?
Yeah, I was like, what is
They
that?
basically figure out that the door to the next rooms, there's always like a number. And at first, they think they figure out that if it's a prime number, that means the room is not safe. It's a trap if it's prime, I think.
Right.
Or the opposite. I can't remember. But anyway, so like you need a mathematician or someone who knows what that means.
And the numbers are long. They're like 9 digits each,
yeah,
right?
we're talking about, or like there's like 3 3-digit numbers.
Yeah.
And then, so at first they think it's that, but then that sort of fails. And they realize like it's factors of prime numbers because they realize the cube they are in at any one time isn't stationary. It's shifting throughout the complex of the cubes. So those numbers are also sort of giving them an indication of where that room moves to. So they eventually figure out they have to find the cube that exists outside of the grid because when that cube moves a certain place, it becomes like a bridge to get out of the cube.
Yeah.
So that's the whole puzzle, right? You're right. The movie's kind of goofy, low budget, poorly acted,
Poor acting.
yada yada yada. There's one thing I kind of want to get your thoughts on.
Okay. There's one thing I liked about this movie, so
Oh,
I
okay.
wonder. Let's
wanna-
see what you have to say. Though.
Okay, so at one point there's a bit of a twist, and one of the guys in there with them turns out he worked on the cube.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So they kind of were suspecting he was a spy or knew more than he was letting on. But he doesn't really know much at all. He's just like, hey, I got a contract to help like engineer or design like a shell for a big box.
Right.
So he knows just a little bit of information about how big it is, but he doesn't really know why he's in there.
Yeah.
He doesn't really know who designed it. And so like everyone in there is so desperate for answers. Like, is it the government? Is it some fucked up rich person trapped us in here? And he kind of comes in with the nihilist take. That is, maybe they just built it and just no one really knows why they built it. They just realized they had it and felt like they had to use it. And I think that's kind of like a commentary on workplaces that get too big.
Okay.
Or, like I think maybe some people can relate to this. Sometimes you work in an office where you've got like 10 people above you in a chain of command and you have these processes that were set up 10 years ago and here's the documentation you have to fill out for this. And in this sort of like very bureaucratic way, I think sometimes people find themselves in these situations where it's like, I don't even know why I'm filling out this form.
Yeah.
Who's even reading this report I'm sending up a chain that no one's actually going to think? So I actually thought there was like kind of a nugget of something interesting about just like this very bureaucratic, like this super evil torture box for people is maybe just a product of like a bureaucratic process where someone's like, we built this box, we better use it.
Might as well use it, but we
Yeah.
don't know why.
But we don't know why.
Yeah.
All right. Is that what you thought was interesting?
No, what I liked about it.
Okay, what did you like
What
about
I
it?
liked about it is that one of the people who were stuck in the cube seemingly had some type of mental disability, and
Yes.
I think it was the police officer, was he, or a detective or something like that, who was kind of just like a really mean guy, and he's
like
kept
this-
saying like, "Let's kill him," like he's
just gonna
worthless,
slow us down,
like
yeah.
exactly, and which is just like horrible to say, but
Uh-huh.
I liked that he ended up being the one. I don't remember his name.
Shazam, I think. But I
Shazam?
think they just call him that because he says that.
Okay, yeah. And so, yeah, he didn't like speak much and stuff. But
Yeah.
then they found that he actually had a special talent. He was a genius
He's a
when it
math
came
genius.
to math and numbers. So he actually led them basically on how to get out. So the person who they thought, or one of the guys at least thought, was just like worthless. He ended up being the one he was the only one that survived.
You're right. They didn't really need Big Bad Cop.
They didn't need anyone else. All they needed was him, and he's the
Yeah.
only one that survived. So I just loved that he was the one that got out. And because I think it also shows a message, like you need to, be inclusive and like also
Yeah.
just like, you know, you can't just like judge a book by a cover, so to speak. Like we all have talents no matter what, and like we're all worth something.
So you did like the movie.
Well, just that part about it. I thought that was just like nice.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's clearly
Yeah.
what they're trying to convey here.
Exactly.
Is
Yeah.
to not just assume just because someone has like special needs or
No, like they're just as, you know, as talented as all of us.
you know, well, or more.
Or more.
They couldn't have gotten out with
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
But basically, he could calculate the factors of prime numbers in a way
Yeah.
where no
So
one
I
else
just
could.
liked that he was the only one that got out.
Yeah, well, it's kind of sad that he's the only
Well,
one that
yeah.
gets out because that basically the cop starts basically losing his mind in there.
Yeah.
And
When
starts-
he killed off one woman, just like dropped her
Yeah.
into the abyss.
Yeah, he like
For no
didn't
reason.
save her. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he kind of wants to develop a romantic relationship with the other young woman at a certain point. So they
Yeah.
basically need to escape him in the
Yeah.
cube too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I liked about it, but that's it. Otherwise, would not recommend.
Thumbs down? I'll give it a thumbs up.
Would not recommend. You're just doing that because I'm giving it a thumbs down.
Yeah. Just trying to be contrarian here. Okay, Jen. Those were our 5 horror movies of the day.
Woo.
I think we did all right.
Are you spooked now?
I haven't slept in days.
Are you spooked?
Actually, I didn't find any of these super scary.
No. I could definitely sleep fine at night after all of them.
Do you have a favorite or scariest movie of all time? If we could leave someone with a recommendation, I'm putting you on the spot.
I
here.
know. I don't know. But I like more of kind of like the psychological thriller
Okay.
versus this like
the
spooky
horror
hair, like Halloween or
monsters.
whatever. Like, oh, I'm gonna chase you in my mask type thing. Like that doesn't
Okay.
really scare me. I like the
Yeah.
ones that make you think a little bit more and make you think it could happen to you. That's
a good
scary.
feeling.
That
Yeah,
is
yeah.
scary.
Okay.
So,
Well,
yeah.
we might have to do this again sometime with
Maybe.
Jen's favorites.
My favorites. Okay.
Yeah. I'll let
Okay.
you pick next time.
Okay.
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 Deal? Okay. And Jen,
scared.
just needed to let you know you're invited to a party this weekend. Not sure if
party.
you heard about it. There's a bit of a party going on. You're invited.
I'll have to check my schedule.
I hope you're. If you don't come, I don't think anyone's coming. Your sister might be a little sad about that.
Well, I'll have to think about it. I'll let you know later.
All right. Oh, I think you're invited too. People listening to this. Yeah. This weekend party.
Well, I'll see if I can make it, but
We think Jen will be there.
if I'm free, I'll consider it.
All right. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for joining us, Jen. Appreciate you.
We'll see y'all later. Bye.
Bye.